Hello, everyone. So, the topic for today is conflict resolution. Before we go ahead, let me introduce myself. I'm Sumit Rai Saxena. I identify myself as a creative and a strategic thinker. I'm a certified corporate trainer and a Green Belt Six Sigma certified auditor. I have more than 12 years of experience in empowering people using adaptive learning practices. I hold rich experience in industries like e commerce, sales, telecom, and banking. So today, I'm going to present you a very timely topic on conflict resolution. I know this is probably a topic very near and dear to all of you, especially at your workplace, isn't it? So we are going to talk about conflict today and what you can do to lessen conflict in your organization. So we are going to understand what exactly is conflict, how is it defined, and is conflict necessarily a bad thing? And we are also going to talk about the importance of communication and importance of active listening. Apart from this, we will also learn about the gift model for active listening. What exactly is gift model and how it can help you to determine what issues are and how you can work towards resolving them. And finally, we are going to talk about the 8 tips of conflict resolution on how to resolve conflict and probably avoid it at your workplace. So let's get started. So, what is conflict? What do you think of it when you hear the word conflict? Well, for most of the people, it strikes a fear in the heart, isn't it? Well, conflict is defined as a process in which one party perceives that his or her interests are being opposed or being negatively affected by the other person. Conflict occurs with two or most people who, despite being their first attempt at an agreement on a course of action, usually because of their values, their perspectives, their backgrounds, their opinions, are contradictory in nature. So, so when does this occur? When does this conflict occur? Now, it occurs within yourself when you're not living according to the values, when you're not living according to your beliefs, when you do something that goes contrary to your nature or what you normally do. It can also happen when your values, your beliefs, your perspectives are threatened by other people. Perhaps their values or their beliefs are totally different than what you actually believe in. It could also be, happen from a fear of unknown, from a lack of fulfillment, from the task that has been assigned to you, or from the job that you have been doing. So now, let me ask you a question. Is conflict necessarily be a bad thing? Well, definitely not. Because most of the time, conflict helps to raise and address problems. It can put things into the perspective that we haven't perhaps thought about it previously. Sometimes people really need conflicts or difference of opinions. Why? Because it helps them keep motivated, it helps them to participate, and also focus on priorities on things which are more important to them. It can also help people to recognize and benefits from the differences, especially when we have a team that is made up of people who are from different background, who have diverse values, diverse perspectives, that can actually strengthen the team by bringing in that difference into the open and others to learn and benefit from him. So now tell me, is conflict really a bad thing? I know you didn't think so. So we understand that conflict is something that helps us to raise and address problems in open. Now, let us see when actually a conflict is a problem. Well, it tends to be a problem when it starts hampering the productivity of you and your team in the workplace. It is also a big problem when you see the morale of the people you are working with goes down. It goes down for the people who are involved as well as people who are around, because nobody would like to be around when a conflict is happening, isn't it? And sometimes conflict can cause inappropriate behavior at the workplace. It can cause violence. People will eventually start feeling sick, and they be late to office, which needs to be looked after. And that's when we realize that the conflict is a problem that needs to be addressed on priority. Now, let us try and understand what are some sources of conflict. Well, as I mentioned already, sometimes it's difference in values and benefits. Sometimes it's about incompatible goals. Sometimes it's a task interdependence, meaning you can do your part of job or the project, but you're waiting for somebody else to finish their part which hasn't been done yet. Sometimes there are not enough resources around. Remember the times when you hadn't have printers and you had to run around, isn't it? Well, there could be a conflict arising. Yes or no? When one feels that their project should be a priority over another when it comes to using a printer. It can also be a problem when there are ambiguous rules, when there is not enough clarity about the policies or the procedures or on the instructions on which a task needs to be done within the organization and what even things such as standard operating procedures are supposed to happen. A source of conflict can also be problems in communication. When people are not communicating well, perhaps there is a misunderstanding because of a language problem or something else has gotten in a way that creates problem when it comes to communication. So these are few sources of conflict that we usually find around the workplace. Now let us see what happens if conflict is not dealt with on priority. Well, as I already mentioned, you will see a lot of more stress happening at a workplace. You might also see people calling in sick. You might also see your turnover levels rise because people are going to quit. They don't want to put up with the problems, all kind of problems that are going to be there at the workplace. Staff may also act out. They may push the buttons. Now, what do we mean by pushing the buttons? It is nothing but, they will find what can trigger you or what can upset you or make you tense at your workplace as a supervisor. Conflict can also affect other people's performance. And if it is not dealt on priority, you as a supervisor may also lose respect of the people that you're looking after. And why will it happen? Because they look up to you and they are able to see that you're incapable of dealing it. You're incapable of dealing the conflicts at workplace. So now that we understood the consequences of not addressing a conflict on priority, let us also go and look how do we deal a conflict at ease. A lot of people have different opinions, different ways of dealing a conflict. Some would try to just pretend that it's not there and eventually it will go away. But that's not the case. Some would try to accommodate it by letting others just get away with it and move on with whatever is happening at a workplace. Some of them would like to compete with others. When people start competing with others in a conflict, it increases a conflict because they are not willing to listen to the person on the other end. Now, probably the two best scenarios of dealing a conflict is either to compromise or find a mutual solution, or to collaborate and work along. So we understand that a key to conflict resolution comes to being able to compromise, find a way of compromising, and collaborating. Now let us see what communication has to play a role here. Now what is communication? Communication is nothing but talking to each other and listening to each person without interruption. When I say listening, when I use the word listening, I mean active listening. It involves active listening, not passively listening and just doing and thinking whatever you want to do, pretending that you're listening to the person. No, you'll have to focus and give your complete attention to the speaker. It's not about being aggressive and trying to get your point across at all cost, but actively listening. So people know that you are paying attention to what they have to say in order to try and understand. And that's what communication is. Now let us see what Dalai Lama has to say on communication. I have come across a famous quote by Dalai Lama that says, when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. Fantastic, isn't it? So, communicating and listening are the important resources, important factors that can help you resolve a conflict at workplace. So, when you communicate by active listening, it's like you're gifting something, you're gifting somebody. It's more like you are giving a gift to somebody. And now we will look at what gift model is all about. So what does the gift model involves? Gift model is like, G stands for giving your total attention to the speaker. I stands for interact by responding using verbal or nonverbal nods. F stands for focusing on underlying the meaning, what the speaker has to say. And T stands for totally accepting the other person's state of mind by empathizing. So, what does this all mean? Let us start off with give your full attention. Now, paying attention to what the other person is trying to say or what the other person is saying means attending to what they have to say. How do you do that? Remove any physical that comes in between. If you're sitting behind a desk, then move out behind the desk. Face the speaker squarely and watch them and look at what they have to say. You might also look at leaning forward, a little bit, but make sure that you don't invade the personal space. Look intently at your speaker. Remove the distractions. How do you do that? Probably by keeping your phone on silent, moving away from your workplace or, your computer, and, moving away from your desk if possible. Because you really want the person who is talking to you know that you are actually listening and paying attention to what he has to say. Another factor is silence. Sometimes, as well, you need to use silence to make sure that the other person is able to get out everything that they want to say. Silence allows, it gives people time to gather their thoughts. So, what will happen if you start talking again? It may break their train of thought, and then it gets difficult for them to get back with what they were trying to say. Now, the problem with this one is that, our culture is really not at ease with using silence. We always want to break that silence, whether it's by giving our opinion or even just giggling or laughing. But again, we need to allow some time to the person who is talking to us to gather his or her thoughts to make sure that they are getting their point across as best as possible. So, like I mentioned here on the slide, the most silence is the most underused word, but it's potentially most powerful way of paying attention. Many conflicts can be resolved by just, being silent and listening to what the other person has to say and then trying to find a possible solution for it. Now, let us look at another important factor: interact by responding. Now, what do I mean by interact by responding is, you want to make sure that you are encouraging the person who is speaking to continue with what they have to say. And a lot of this can be done non-verbally. And how do we do that? By using typical responses. Now let us see what are the non-verbal responses. Sometimes it can be by smiling, by raising your eyebrows, by nodding to, by listening what the other person has to say, and most importantly, by using a steady eye contact. So by using a steady eye contact, you can go ahead and use short verbal responses, but make them really short, like, I see, then, aha, tell me more. But again, limit your verbal content so the speaker can focus more and make sure that they are getting everything out, whatever they want to say. The moment this is done, you need to make sure to focus on the underlying meaning. That means you need to make sure that you are understanding what the real problem is. And the best way to do that is to go ahead and summarize or paraphrase what the other person has just said to you. So paraphrase them on what they have said, trying to be as concise but focusing on the content. So put it in your own words to ensure you're understanding what the problem is or what is the issue that is causing this conflict. And now, finally, the most difficult part of this gift model is to totally accept the other person's state of mind. Now, what do we mean by this? Well, sometimes the underlying meaning is not what actually being said. Everybody has their own way of seeing people. People have their own filters, their own ways of seeing this world, and this can motivate or at times paralyze people. It can be a simple situation, but is blown out of the proportion based on the experience that the speaker had in the similar instances. So, this is where you will make sure that you are showing empathy to the speaker. You don't have to agree, but you have to try and see it from their perspective, their point of view. And here you're going to use the reflective statements to let them understand that you are connecting to the feelings of the speaker and what they are trying to express. So you can go ahead and use statements like, I can sense that. Well, it's really annoying. Or you seem to be going through this. Well, it sounds as if it appears to me that. So by using these kind of statements, you're empathizing, but you're not necessarily agreeing with the people. So here you're showing that you understand that this is a big issue for them, and you as a leader or a supervisor would like to, you're wanting to help them as best as possible. So let us look at a quote by Hagpartner. It says, if I ignore the emotional plea and respond only to the words, I'll not be communicating with you. The heart of every conversation is the demand being made on my emotions, isn't it? So let us go ahead and recap what is gift model. So gift model involves giving your total attention to the speaker, interact by responding in verbal and non-verbal cues, focus on underlying meaning on what the speaker has to say, and then totally accepting the other person's state of mind and empathizing with him and giving him a reassurance that you as a supervisor or a leader would like to work on a possible best solution for him to resolve this conflict. So now that we understood what gift model of active listening is all about, let us go ahead and see how does this helps to resolve a conflict. Now, how do I go ahead and implement this and resolve the conflict at my workplace or wherever it is? Now, being able to actively listen, you can now look at 8 steps of resolving a conflict. The first one says gather facts, not feelings. Everybody has the different feelings, but you need to focus on what actually has been occurring. Don't focus on the feelings of a person. Try to focus on the facts to give you a reliable information to resolve a conflict. Pay attention, listen actively to try and understand their perspective. That's what point 2 says. Learn about the true needs and desires behind each side, what they are really feeling, why they are really feeling that way. Now that you really understood what the problem is, you will have to sit and ask clarifying questions to understand the desired outcome. Now you will have to understand what would people like to see happening as a solution. The point 4 says brainstorm possible solutions. Now, just because you are a leader or a supervisor, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will have to come up with all the solutions. In fact, when you involve all people, it is the best way to get their buy-ins because it is something that everybody is agreeing to and helping to develop a solution which is mutually satisfactory for everyone. Now, let us look at the rest of the 4 steps of resolving a conflict. Now, step 5 says discuss solutions for each side and compromise. So the reason why you will have to work on compromise is because the both sides, they should not feel like a loser or a winner, but they should walk away feeling like a resolution was come upon. So once you have your buy-ins, once a resolution was come upon, you will go ahead and agree upon a solution. Then you will go ahead and implement that solution to resolve this conflict. Now, once you go ahead and implement a solution, you will have to go back and re-evaluate the solution. Why re-evaluation is necessary? Because you will have to go and find out whether the solution that was come upon is helping to resolve a conflict or not, whether the solution is working or not. If you find that this particular solution is not working, you will again go back to the people who were involved and see what can be done to try and solve the solution effectively. But again, it is very important that you get the buy-in of those people involved, because when you get the buy-in, they would better be willing to try and implement and find a good solution that is going to work. Here I have been asked in past, what if one party agrees to do it and then does not follows through? Well, If one party is not willing to implement the solution, then you will have to go ahead and implement it by tying some consequences to it, because it will become a disciplinary action, disciplinary issue on your part, and you will have to look at some sort of disciplinary action. But like I said earlier, if you go through these steps, get buy-in of people, and try to find a mutually satisfactory solution, then you have better chances of resolving a conflict, which is where these 8 steps of resolving conflict helps. Now that we understood the steps of resolving conflict, let us go and understand the tips of dealing conflict. As we see here, it is very important as a supervisor for you to not to address it in front of others. Take it into the office, at a corner, or outside where others are not around. At the same time, you will have to work on triple C. And when I say triple C, you as a supervisor will have to stay calm, cool, and collected. Control your emotions when you deal such a volatile situation. And do not raise your voice, because the person on the other end is already aggressive and has come up to you for a solution, expecting you to empathize with him, understand him from his perspective, and help him find a better solution. Now, let us go and see how do we lessen conflict at work. Now, if it seems to be related to the task that needs to be executed, that needs to be done, you make sure that everybody is aware of what their jobs are, what is a task, what is an action that needs to be taken, who should be responsible for it. So try to define what actions are required, set up certain instructions, set up certain action owners and certain time intervals for that task to be, executed in time. So how do you do that? You as a supervisor will have to regularly go ahead and review job descriptions. Just go ahead and try to review the JD on regular intervals. And another important factor as a supervisor that you will have to look at is building relationships at workplace. You will have to make sure that you as a supervisor are intentionally building the relationships. Talk to your staff, try to know more about them on a personal level. Get to know more about them. What is that they are good at? What are their strengths? What are their threats? What kind of a threats do they see? What are their opportunities? What kind of opportunities do they see at a workplace? Try to understand more, from their personal, on their personal side. Try to know their own perspective about the work, about the JD that they have been assigned, right? And whether they are happy with the roles that are given to them, whether they are able to fulfill it without any conflict or without any hindrance. And that shows how approachable you are. And the moment you start being approachable, the moment you start knowing your staff on a personal side, you as a supervisor will build good relationships at work. And that is an important factor to lessen conflict at work. And when you put in solutions, when you go ahead and implement a solution, you will have to make sure that you as a supervisor are getting regular updates, regular reports, be it written reports, be it verbal updates. But you will have to make sure that you get regular updates from them as to what exactly is happening, right? Avoid sitting back and following up on a later stage where nothing can't be done, right? Have at least a written or a verbal report from the people who are involved in executing these tasks. And if necessary, do conduct regular trainings for people who are involved, so everybody understands what's going on. At the same time, as a supervisor, you will have to sit with them, collaborate with them, and evaluate their performance on regular intervals. Try to come up with TNIs on the particular issue, and conduct regular trainings. And post training, again, go back and check the behavior. What kind of a behavior do they exhibit in terms of implementing the solution at the workplace? Try to sit with them, understand, collaborate, and get it executed effectively. And a very important factor as a supervisor you will have to do at first is to develop SOPs. SOPs are nothing but standard operating procedures. So develop procedures for the routine task that has been set for the team members. How do you do it? You will have to explain, you will have to instruct, elaborate how duties needs to be done. What are the expectations from everyone? Set goals, set compatible goals with people. Write down the expectations. What are you expecting as a supervisor, so everybody is on the same page and people have clear instructions on what are the tasks that needs to be done, who are the action owners, what is an action, actionable time in which a task needs to be done, who should be approached in case of any concern, in case of any hindrance, who needs to be approached, and what should be an approach strategy. All these things you will have to define in your SOPs. So I'm sure we understood how do we go ahead, how do you go ahead and lessen conflict at work, right? So you will regularly review their job descriptions and make amendments wherever necessary. You will build relationships, you will try to know people on their personal side, and you will try to know your team members better. You will also get written updates, you will get written status reports, you will get verbal reports from the people on the solution that has been implemented. And if you find, you will conduct regular trainings, right, to the people who are involved for them to execute the task better, right? At the same time, you as a supervisor will also build SOPs for the routine task that needs to be executed to make sure that people have a clear understanding on their JD and the expectations that the organization or you as a supervisor have with them. So I wish I could ask your takeaways of this session. Let us go ahead and see what are the overall takeaways of, from this training module. The first takeaway would be, we understood that conflict necessarily, not need to be bad, because it helps you to try and see the problem from different perspective and resolve it better. Takeaway two, we understood the importance of communication and importance of active listening. By understanding the importance of active listening, we will also go ahead and apply the gift model to aid the understanding of a conflict, which is our takeaway three, isn't it? Now, very important, takeaway four for each one of us of all levels is triple C. Now, what is triple C? We will stay calm, we will stay cool, we will stay collected while dealing a conflict. So I'm sure you had a pretty good understanding on conflict resolution. I would like to end this session with a quote by Bernard Meltzer. He says, if you have learned how to disagree without being disagreeable, then you have discovered the secret of getting along, whether be it business, be it family relationships, or life itself. Isn't it wonderful? Because conflict is of many types. You can have a conflict within yourself, which is called intra-conflict. You can have a conflict with another person, which is called inter-conflict. You can have conflicts within your group, your same group, your own team, which is called intra-group conflict. You can also have conflicts at different groups, be it at your workplace or at personal levels or in the society, which is called intergroup conflict. Yeah. So try to apply the gift model and see how it helps you to resolve conflict at your workplace. Thank you so much for your time.